And really the theme is trading beyond your ego, then separating your identity from your trading results. So most traders fail because they tie their self-worth to their profits and losses, P&L. When identity is fused with performance, every trade becomes a personal referendum on who they are. Losses feel like attacks on yourself, not just outcomes of probability. So let me ask you, have you ever been in a situation where you didn't want to take the loss because you didn't want to be wrong? If you have, this is what we're talking, you've fused your self-worth with the outcome of having to have a profitable trade. And if you were here for the last class, we talked about the principle of predefining risk. Why I followed up with this topic is that if you do not predefine the cost of entry in your trade, you're going to be very vulnerable to succumbing to your ego. Again, the key concepts here, two of them, is if your self-worth is tied to profits and losses of your P&L, every trade becomes a personal referendum of who you are. So predefining risk is it's an important step into the process of not fusing your self-worth with the outcome of a trade. It's the beginning of the path of executing a trading plan. So the two key concepts, identity fused with trading results leads to I'm a profitable trader, turns into a prison of having to be right. For me, say it now, I'm going to repeat it here. You don't have to be right. You have to trade right. When you do that, you have an objective separation. So versus I am a profitable trader, which has a personal attachment to it, is I execute a profitable system. This preserves objectivity and freedom. Does this make sense? Okay. Any questions? See, Quant, you're typing. We'll wait. While you're typing, okay. How to react in here? Chat, write, or voice? Right. Unfortunately, I can't.
Order filled.
Do the voice on this. So if you want to react here, type it in the chat. Good question. So I'm going to move on. So here's the ego trap. When a trader makes their self-worth dependent on their P&L, every loss threatens their identity. Every drawdown becomes a personal attack of who they are. the ego starts making decisions that their strategy never would. I'm going to stop right there for a minute. So what if you have a trading plan? I'm going to ask this and I'd like some response. First of all, do you have a trading plan? When we've talked about this, I know Quant 007, you haven't been here, but do you have a trading plan that is well defined, that you have set up, and that you've written out and put in front of you before every trade, that you have a checklist? Okay, you do. Now, have you ever, most traders can attest to this, made a decision to cut the trade off and veer from the strategy? If you have, and you're honest about it, your ego has gotten the best of you. Part of those excuses are, you hold losers too long, because admitting the loss admits you're wrong. I've done this. I know these from experience. You can cut winners short because you need to prove that you can make money. But if these were not, most of the time, if these decisions are made that weren't part of the plan, this is where you need to check your ego. And you can do this through proper journaling. Now, we talk about it a lot, and from my experience, most people don't do the journaling. It's too hard. Because we can make a mental, our ego says, well, next time I won't do it. But when you review trades and you have a journal and you have these checkpoints, you can really check to see if you're acting through ego or you're executing a profitable edge. It's paramount that this is done. All right. The ego trap. A trader will overtrade because each trade becomes a chance to validate yourself. That's another one. Overtrading. Well, I'm going to repeat what I was saying is, you don't have to be right. You just have to trade right. So when you overtrade, one of the traps on that ego part is, I need to be right. Oh, I'll take any trade so I can get back what I lost. All right. That's another part of the ego trap. I see that this stream might have stopped. Let me restart it. Okay. So, in conclusion of the ego trap, when your self-worth equals your P&L, the ego intrudes. One of them, holding losers too long leads to admitting a loss is admitting a weakness. The one, cutting winners short, leads to you need to prove profitability quickly. Over trading leads to each trade becomes a chance for validation to prove that I can be right. The result of all this is decisions serve your ego preservation, not your edge execution. And this happens often in trading. I've never heard a trader that says, well, that's what I wanted to lose money, unless you're doing something illegal. But the part of that ego is what cuts off, this is important to understand, it cuts off proper decision making of your plan. Go through these, identify them, journal it. The more you do that, the more your mind slows down when you trade and you start identifying poor decision making. All right. Any questions? Now, we're going to go through trading through a professional perspective. And the best traders separate their ego and P&L completely. Professional traders' mantra is, I execute a profitable system, instead of I'm a profitable trader. This highlights a shift from focusing on personal identity to emphasizing the process. This brings to mind the lesson we had with Tom Hugard's Best Loser Win. Part of the theme of that book is to execute a trading plan and lose your ego. If you have an edge, it's going to show out over time. In that process is measured losses. If you take them personally, this is where your ego interferes. So the process, the step, the lesson is to separate that from your P&L. This distinction emphasizes the importance of following a proven strategy rather than relying solely on a personal skill or intuition. So we just talked about, do you have a trading plan? Does it have an edge over time? If it does, and you're not finding success, or you're in a loop of quick success and failure, then you need to really understand if where your ego is getting in front of your success or consistency. Professional traders know the difference between what they do and who they are. Professional traders treat losses like data points, not personal failures. Because when their identity isn't on the line, they can finally trade objectively. Now, this is a key point. The difference between trading objectively and subjectively. The objective trader is executing a successful strategy. A subjective trader thinks he's a profitable trader. His ego is on the line by that sentence. And understand the difference between being objective and subjective. You're attaching something to the outcome that's personal when you have a subjective viewpoint in trading. So understand that and catch yourself if you're doing that. I know it was a long road for me. I did not like to be wrong. And in an environment of uncertainty, you're going to be wrong, most likely more than you're going to be right. So if your ego is fragile, you're going to get caught in a vicious cycle. So points. Professionals separate role from identity. An example is a surgeon. Surgeons don't define themselves by every outcome. Another example, pilots don't equate turbulence with personal failure. Next point, losses are just data points, not character judgments. I really like that statement. They're data points. It has nothing to do with your character. Now, a loss that gets out of control, no one's going to start questioning your character, because your character is holding on to the fact that you have to be right or you can't be wrong. Either one. When you journal and you compare your results to your objective trading plan, you'll start seeing these pitfalls. And believe me, they're not. You just start going, who is that? Why did I make that trade? That couldn't have been me. Then you're on the road to improvement. It's an extremely important point to understand. So, with the identity detached, traders can treat the market as probabilities instead of personal battles. All right. I hope that's clear. Any questions, yes or no, on, or comments if you suffer from this? We'll go to the next section. The brain's survival bias. The pattern matching trap. The trader's brain is a pattern matching machine that's working against them in the markets. Evolution has equipped humans to find patterns everywhere as a survival mechanism. Spotting food sources, identifying predators, and reacting quickly to perceived threats. In trading, however, this instinct can be misleading. The mind is primed to see familiar shapes and recurring movements in price action, even when those patterns are random or meaningless. As a result, traders often latch onto the most obvious formations, believing every breakout, for example, will continue, or that every support level is unbreakable. This tendency is driven by wishful thinking rather than objective analysis. The challenge lies in retraining the brain to recognize not just patterns, but also the randomness that dominates the market. Only by doing so can traders avoid being led astray by false signals and make decisions based on probabilities instead of instincts. So, what does this have to do with the ego? Well, the randomness of seeing things that you perceive as a pattern without testing them, without having a trading plan and varying from your plan, becomes very subjective. It's going to be easy to take trades because of a perceived opportunity or a perceived threat or something that is in its nature random, because you haven't identified your approach, your trading plan. That type of decision making usually comes out of having to be right or having to find a winning trade or abandoning a trading plan because it had some losses. It's a pattern matching that can be a trap. And the root of that is your ego, because you don't want to take the loss, and now you look for something else, another pattern that you have improved, because under pressure, you are fight or flight. And it's usually the flight if you're not following your trading plan. I've used this example before. If you're saying, boy, I hope this goes up, I need this to go up, what is that? It's an emotion. Or you might even say, I need this to go up so I can be green on the day. That's your ego. So the important part here is to identify, and I've had this theme since the beginning, is that you need to have a consistent approach to taking risk, which is trading. When your ego gets involved, decision making is based on emotion.
Order filled.
And a large percentage of the time it leads to failure. Okay, the path of mastery. Successful traders develop their skills through disciplined training. Disciplined training. They examine thousands of charts to recognize randomness in addition to recurring patterns. Honing your opportunity. Following a trading plan with an edge. Or if you're still in the, you could be still developing your trading plan. So that's you examine and recognize what is a perceived opportunity or random opportunity, or is it a recurring pattern that I can lean on to take good risk? And defining that over time, you become disciplined, and the more disciplined you are, the easier it is to execute a trading plan and take proper risk. Successful traders cultivate the ability to distinguish genuine signals from background noise. This happens all the time on news events. A lot of noise. Oh, this, it's this, it's that. This has got to happen, and it gets amplified on financial news networks. That's the noise. Well, without a trading plan, you might make decisions based on what the prevailing headline analysis is. It has no root in your trading plan, because you have to take the risk. You have to put the trade on. You have skin in the game. So if you're making decisions based on noise, you need to identify that. Successful traders, their decisions are grounded in probability rather than influenced by emotional biases. I mean, that says it all right there. True insight emerges when a trader appreciates statistical uncertainty rather than seeking absolute certainty. Again, you do not need to be right. You need to trade right. In trading right, you have measured risk. You have a plan that has a probability, an edge over time. When you appreciate that uncertainty, you allow yourself the freedom to lose a proper amount of money in your account, a proper amount. You're not attached to the ego of, I need to be green. Now, let me ask you, have you ever been in that situation? I need to be green today. I took 2 trades today, and they were within my plan, and they were losing trades. But, I got to find something, anything, so I can be green today. Have you ever been in that situation? Well, I have. And the more you do that, the less chance you are to survive or thrive. You do not have to be green every day. As a matter of fact, it's not possible. You could have streaks. Yeah, well, yeah, tilt. Yeah, this idea is always some kind of lingering tilt. Yeah, because you want to identify that. And seriously, when people go on tilt, it's their ego. It comes from poker. So when you're not executing a plan that's based on probabilities and with a test, you're looking for certainty in where there is no certainty. So what in this environment, what is how's your decision making going to be affected? Well, without a proper knowledge of probabilities, you're going to fall back to having to be right.
Order filled.
I know from my experience personally, when I was a younger trader, I would be on the roller coaster, because when I was right, I told you I was right, and I would hold things. And when I was lucky, he's a huge winner. But then when it was the unlucky side, I'd give it back. So what I didn't understand was probabilities. This is that insight we're talking. When a trader appreciates statistical uncertainty rather than seeking absolute certainty. All right. So when you have just to go further on it's a great comment here. Lingering tilt. Yeah, you're still, that lingering tilt is probably seeking absolute certainty. I'm not a big believer in A+ setups. There is only, I would say, limit yourself to one setup. Look for one type of trade. Do it 20 times. See if you can do that. That alone is tough for a lot of traders. to take the same trade with the same risk parameters 20 times in a row. That leads to, when you do that, it leads to some data points where you can identify whether your edge is beginning to work or not. And also, it'll give you an idea is if you have to be right. This is what we're talking about here. This is what the class is about. Your ego likely gets in the way. Okay. I'll let you finish typing, Quant. All right, so here's the bottom line from this class. In an amateur mindset is I am my P&L, which leads to emotional volatility, which equals financial volatility. Professional trader's mindset is I execute a process, which leads to losses are feedback, not failures, which leads to freedom from the outcome. Trading success comes from identity detachment. Objectivity equals consistency. So, and objective pattern recognition is an edge, not a ego-driven validation. Okay, so time for questions. Quant, I am very mechanical, systematic, not so much impulse-driven. But sometimes the markets bore you out, especially when not so much happens. And then it is getting dangerous. Okay. It's a great hindsight. Great insight. Now, with that question, maybe you can expound upon, but sometimes the markets bore you out. So when you say the markets bore you out and not so much happens, and then it's getting dangerous, can you add to that? What do you mean that it gets dangerous and the markets are bored? They make you bored. This is important. You're going to finish typing? Not a problem. going to put a link to this in the chat here. So no setups are happening. Then you are searching for trades. Yeah. Now, and this is important. Why do you need to find something if it's not there? There's no opportunity. You have to ask yourself, are you seeking thrills? Is it thrill seeking? Are you are you just looking just to make money? And it sounds counterintuitive. I understand. Because justify screen time, and this is a great point. Yeah, and this gets tough because you're putting in time. You want to be rewarded. Now, part of that is this trading isn't a job. Because the job was with the assumption if I put the time in, I'm going to get paid most likely by the hour. Now, with that, you have to justify your time, but are you justifying your risk? So then you fall into the trap of having to make money. And that leads to, we'll talk, emotional trading. This is where we start looking for patterns that might not be there. It can lead to wishful thinking, which is an ego-driven decision versus an objective analysis that you're looking for a certain trade. Okay. So what I would suggest too in that situation, if you're looking at one market and there's nothing happening, and this is a good point. So I started many years ago, decades ago, at the Mid-America Commodity Exchange. It was a small exchange, the original exchange to offer mini contracts. It used to be called the Mini Exchange as a nickname. And what would happen at this Mid-America Commodity Exchange is it was small. It was across the street from the Board of Trade. It had many contracts from the biggest, most successful, whether it was from the Merc, the Board of Trade, or the COMEX. Now, why I bring that up, and this is a great point here, is there were traders who had skill of executing a trading plan, whatever it was, because there wasn't a lot of what I would call paper. There wasn't a lot of volume. So we had to develop some type of trading plan. Now, if they were at the time in the gold and it got slower silver, they would hear the bond pit get heating up. You would literally hear it. And it was so small they could just walk, 25, 30 steps and go there because there was action and trade their plan. So they became those guys who could do that became really successful traders when they went to the Board of Trade of the market, or they went to New York. So maybe one of the things you can do is identify your, first of all, you've identified your trading plan. And the worst thing, I know what you mean, is you get into place is it's not working. There's nothing going on. Jesse Livermore had a quote that says, even a skunk couldn't make a cent in this market. And he would go down to Florida and fish for a while. So when there's not opportunity in one place, we can get that trap of getting stuck and creating trades that aren't there. So I would, one of the things you could do is look, if you've really objectively identified your trading plan and your edge, it should work in different markets. So if you're looking at CBOT markets, I don't know, you're trading grains and bonds, I'd imagine. Look at a few markets for your trading plan without knowing it specifically. I bet you you have an opportunity in a few different markets. So with that said, too, at the Board of Trade, when I spent many years in the bond room and the grain room, but in the bond room there was one of the biggest traders in the world named Tom Baldwin. He was the king of the bonds. He was a massive trader. And then the bond market died. They literally died. The government moved their issuance from the 30-year to the 10-year, and the 30-year just really, and then the interest rates went down to almost zero for years. And Tom Baldwin, and then the trading moved from the floor to the screen, and Tom Baldwin lost half his fortune. A lot of it was because the market died. There was an opportunity there for what he did. One of the things you might want to look at is, and I do it, is I'm scanning 10 different, 12 different markets for my setup, for the trade I want to take. Because some markets just don't have it. And if you have the feeling that you have to do something, do it based on your trading edge. All right? And let me know how it works. But you have to really define your trading plan. All right? Any other comments or concerns, questions? If not, we'll end this and we'll talk again Monday. Oh, you're welcome. Glad you made it here. And I won't be doing a class, but I'm going to go a little further in this again on Monday.
Order
I really
filled.
think this is very important distinction. All right.
Order filled.
I liking this. 1 o'clock. Medan vad jag köper. Pretty close. That was it. I mean, give it up. It is only there. This is the first one that open